All right. Good
Good
evening.
evening.
I'm Rachel.
I'm Brandon.
And this is our first webinar together. So just a few preliminary things. If this is your first Crowdcast event, there's two things that we really want you to do all throughout our talk tonight. If you have any questions at all whatsoever related to the topic that we're discussing, there's this little ask a question thing on your phones or your screens that you should see here at the bottom. So pull that up, ask whatever questions you have, or read through other people's questions. And if you really like one, say that you like it so it comes to the top and we make sure that we answer all your questions when we're done addressing the issues on the table this evening. Also, we want you to follow us. So if you look up on this corner, there's a way to follow us so that you get notifications every Thursday in the month of February when we are live on Crowdcast, hopefully bringing you something that you have not thought about lately. Okay, so.
And if you're following us on Facebook Live, go to Crowdcast. The links will be in both Nemo and at the gathering, and then you can follow us to get the alerts there.
Yes. Oh, we got stuff going off. Okay, so a little bit about us. Brandon and I met when I was 18, and you were what, 22, 23? 20 at Asbury College, now Asbury University. Dated for 2 years and were engaged a year and got married, and then joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Eastern Europe in Bulgaria, which is a glorious country. You should all go check it out. And then came home from the Peace Corps and both got our master's in divinity at Duke Divinity School. Hey, basketball's not bad. So, and then we became pastors here in Virginia Beach and church planters. So between the both of us, we've been in some type of ministerial setting. Combined, you have about 25 years of ministerial experience coming to you live through the screen.
So we've realized that the United Methodist Church this month at our general conference later in February is going to be talking about our United Methodist Church's relationship with the LGBTQIA communities, dealing with homosexuality and ordination. And we realized that the church has had a long-standing stance on homosexuality, but we wanted to use these podcasts, these webinars, to focus on sexuality and talk about the ways all of us are having sex, because being human means we are a result of two people's sexual activity, and being human means we are sexual. God has given us the gift of sex and our sexuality, and it can be used as a gift and a glue that binds us together as one, and it can be used to cause a lot of hurt and destruction when it's used incorrectly. So let's start off with an easy, destructive way to use your sexuality. Pornography. My first time seeing an erotic image, Rachel's going to talk to you more about the definition of pornography. So my first exposure was at my dad's office bathroom. On the back, the Norfolk Southern girls in their bikinis. I remember loving to go to the bathroom when I was there at my father's office. But my first encounter with graphic pornography. My two older cousins, found my grandpa's Playboys, and they were in a room looking at them. And I came in like the younger cousins should do, and said, "What are you looking at?" And they showed me. And I was about 4 or 5 years old when I was first exposed to that.
Okay, the first and only time I ever saw a pornographic image was actually at church, and it was a church-sponsored event here in Virginia Beach. I was in middle school with my two sisters, and parents and kids were invited to be a part of this sexuality exploration weekend. And so one of the activities that we had to do together is my mom sat down with us, and they gave us Playboys or Playgirls, which one would it be? Naked men. Anyways, I had to make a collage of naked men with my mother. So yes, I am still in therapy over that. Thank you to the United Methodist Church for exposing me to porn for my first time. All right, so what is pornography? As we talk about that tonight, what do we mean? Well, Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines pornography as the depiction, this is like a direct quote, okay? A depiction of erotic behavior, as in pictures or writing, intended to cause sexual excitement. Material, such as books or a photograph that depicts erotic behavior and is intended to cause sexual excitement. Or a third option is the depiction of acts in a sensational manner so as to arouse a quick, intense emotional reaction. And another definition that's just a classic in the legal community comes from the Supreme Court. Supreme Court Justice in 1964, Justice Potter Stewart, they were trying to define what is hardcore pornography. And he said, or what is obscene? And his response was, I shall not today attempt further to define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced, but I know it when I see it. And I think that's true. We know what porn is when we see it. So all of this data that we're going to be citing, all the statistics, are all going to be included on a call to action that'll be at the bottom of the screen when we're done talking tonight, so that you can do further research, make sure that we're not just making this stuff up. Okay, so when it comes to the relationship between the church and pornography, I think Meredith Summers in her August 2014 Washington Post article said it best when she said, there are two kinds of Christians in America: those who watch porn and those who lie about it. So she went on to share some research from the Barna Group that said 65% of non-Christian men and 64% of Christian men, so pretty much the same number, visit pornography, review pornography, visit porn websites at least once a month. And Mary Claire Magazine did a 2-year study where they found that 30% of women look at pornography, or 31% look at it every week, 30% do so a few times a month, and 10% get a daily fix. And remember, pornography could be both images and, especially for women, Harlequin or trashy romance novels as well. Okay, and Psychology Today had an article in March of 2018 that says this, and this is like a direct quote, guys, okay? Alexa, the leading web traffic tracker, says that among the world's tens of millions of sites, Pornhub ranks number 36. But if you eliminate search engines like Google and Yahoo, if you take out shopping sites like Amazon and sites based on user-generated content like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, if you focus only on sites that publish other content, then Pornhub ranks number 4 in the world, only behind Wikipedia, Microsoft, and Netflix. So guys, that's an estimated 81 million people a day who are on the Pornhub website. And 25% of those watching what they offer are women. So their stats might differ slightly from Marie Claire, but it's still a lot more than you would expect.
Just because we're doing it, it doesn't make it right. We've heard it said that women need a reason, men need a place. And that's something I've experienced and understand. And so I want to talk today, right now, from a guy's perspective and kind of why this is seems to be a bigger issue with looking at pornography and masturbating from a guy's perspective. So the desire to look at porn, it's because men, we are wired to be sexually charged with the hormones and everything. From the first time when we wake up, I mean, morning wood, that is something that's real. It starts in puberty. It's still here at 42. And I've heard 60, 70-year-olds say it's still true. It's just with all the chemicals, just how we are hardwired to as men. It's just we're charged from the morning into the evening. And so also we have millions of sperm that are being produced, thousands every minute. And so there's just kind of this push, this biological push in that region of wanting to have a release. And so when you mix the chemicals and the biology to it, there's this desire for a release and a physical push that begins in puberty. And heterosexual men, we just want to see women naked, or that part that we like and have or fantasize over. We want to see that. And if we can't do it in person, then we want to look at it and masturbate to it on a screen or on paper. But Scripture tells us that Adam and Eve were created to be one, and Eve was created so Adam wouldn't be alone. It's very clear that God says it's not good for a man to be alone. And that whole garden, story about being naked, that's the way God intended it. to be, because when you're naked, you're 100% vulnerable. You can't hide anything. You have no secrets. You don't keep anything back. You're totally 100% exposed all the time. And that creates this great, wonderful intimacy. So when we have this intimacy of complete vulnerability and no secrets, when we have sex, that gift given to us, that becomes a glue that binds each of us together. Looking at it that way, you shouldn't have multiple partners, and it should not be with a magazine, computer screen, or your phone. When we look at pornography, it's a distortion of living into the fullness of being created in the image of God. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 3 through 4, Paul says that for this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his or her own body in holiness and honor. God did not give you a body to connect with a computer screen or a piece of paper or your phone. God created sex to feel good, and God wants you to have a lot of sex with your spouse, not with some fake, sexually dysfunctional actors on a screen. And he wants you to be able to control it. But when you watch porn, you lose all that control.
And because it's a distortion of living into the image of God, it doesn't only have spiritual and relational consequences, it can have physical ones as well. So 1 Corinthians 6:18 says, flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the sexually immoral person sins against his own body. So looking at porn is a sin. And what's worse, it's a sin against your own body. And if that isn't enough to keep you from clicking on that link on your computer or your phone, what about the fact that the National Institute of Health reports that 1 in 4 men with erectile dysfunction are now under 40 years old? And one of the reasons for this, according to the medical community, is pornography. So how does porn give you erectile dysfunction? Well, it's called the Coolidge effect. Okay, I'm not a scientific person, but I am a nerd, so I researched it. And I've never experienced the Coolidge effect. But it says that dopamines are released when you watch pornography, and they're actually stronger and perhaps more addictive than opioids. So stronger, but they don't give the same amount of pleasure. So your body is never actually satisfied. So what the Coolidge effect found is when you look at porn online, your body reacts to this dopamine release with each new partner, because it's the new partner and the different faces that like stimulates it all over again. And so it increases the amount of sperm and semen produced because your body wants to finish the act. But the thing is, you're watching it more and more and more, and your body can't keep up. So eventually it runs out of the little swimmers because it's exhausted from all the excitement and assumes that it has mated with something other than your computer screen or your hand. The National Institute of Health did a study of high school seniors and found that they have a low sex drive. These kids haven't even had a chance to get out there, fall in love, and develop a sex life yet. And porn has ruined that for them. And lest I leave, written porn or romance novels off the list, the Washington Post had an article where they shared that 46% of all mass marketed paperbacks sold in the United States are romance novels. And the latest romance novel to really just blast off into the stratosphere with sales was 50 Shades of Grey. So I have to admit, I never read the book, but I did read the description of the plot on Wikipedia. And I just really wonder how women could fawn all over a story where a woman is abused, mistreated, humiliated, and think that that story has anything to do with true love or real romance.
So let's summarize. Porn is bad. It's not God's will for us, and it doesn't improve your relationships. Even if you watch it as a couple, which is a question we both have gotten, it also doesn't make you better in bed. In fact, studies shows the more porn you watch, the more you withdraw from your relationships, and you experienced increased secrecy, less intimacy, and more depression, which also statistically makes you more prone to have anxiety, body image issues, poor self-image, relationships problems, insecurity, and depression. 2 researchers at the University of Alabama studied the effects of porn and media for over 30 years and found that when you look at porn, you too are dissatisfied with your partner's look. his or her sexual performance, the lack of his or her sexual curiosity, and sexual affection. You also become less likely to value monogamy and marriage, less intimate with your partner, and more likely to cheat on the person you are with. So, what about masturbation? Well, we talk about this. It's talked about. We're talking about this because in the Bible, the only vague reference to masturbation is the story of Onan in Genesis 38, where he had to marry his brother's wife when his brother died to continue the line of his brother. But he didn't want to have, Onan didn't want to have kids with this woman, his sister-in-law. So he pulled out early and spilled his seed on the ground. And Christians have read ties to masturbation in this story. And because you are spilling your seed without any hope of procreation. So is masturbation a sin? Do we see it anywhere as a sin in the Bible? In Leviticus, we read that when a man spills his seed, he's unclean. And you are until you clean it up. But outside of that, we don't have much to go on. So here's the thing. I think it's all about balance. If you're masturbating to an image of your spouse while on a 6 or 9 month deployment to stay focused on your marriage and to stay in this monogamous relationship, that's a lot better than a boat boo or habitual pornography to movies and videos and whatever you can get your hands on in deployment or away from your spouse for business or whatever. If you're single and masturbate enough to satisfy the occasional itch so you aren't rushing into sex in your relationships, for us, that's a lot better than an option that is gluing yourself or binding yourself to someone that's not good for you or you're just not going to be married, that you're not going to be married with. Now, science does show that if you have that thing, blue balls, or feel that pressure to release, you don't technically, scientifically need to release. The pain, the swelling, it will go away.
Did you hear that, ladies? Tell them it'll go away. Give it a few hours. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. The swelling, it'll go away with time. So don't think it's a process that has to be seen through to completion. But focus on self-control. Don't put yourself in those situations to have an erection for such a long time without a release that you get to that pain and that swelling. But be focused on self-control. Guys, you don't have to focus on every pretty woman that you see or the parts of a woman that appeal to you. You can look away and focus on something else. Proverbs 5:15-19 says, drink water from your own cistern. Cistern, not sister. Flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets, let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love.
All right. And ladies, if you struggle with masturbation, look at what's triggering it for you. Is it Hallmark or 50 Shades of Grey or pornography or the latest romance novel or the sex toy parties? I've never been to one. I guess people don't want to invite their pastor to those kinds of things, which is just fine because I don't think I need to go. But practice self-control. Don't get caught up in unrealistic relationships or unhealthy self-gratification. That doesn't bring you closer to anyone but yourself. Again, God gave us sex to help us connect and be intimate with our spouse. So focus on having great, meaningful relationships and great sex within the confines of marriage. All right, so now we're going to tackle some of the questions that have come up so far. So if you have any others, feel free. All right, so first question here is, what if you're single and nobody wants anything to do with you? Would it be so wrong to look at a little pornography to make yourself feel good? What do you think, babe?
I guess there are different levels. I would assume that that one, I guess softcore could lead to hardcore, that could lead to some of the crazy stuff that I really can't imagine. Maybe bestiality or something like that. So I'd say, like we said, is with balance.
Well, masturbation is with balance, but pornography really isn't. And looking at an image is not going to help you actually connect to other people. And all the stats show if you're feeling lonely and you think that looking at pornography will help you feel more connected, it's not going to bode well for any future relationships, any possible relationships, because it really does hinder the way you see and interpret what love is and how people show love to each other. So it's just not healthy, not a good idea. Sorry.
Yeah, I would, work on self-love and self-image as well.
We have some more really good questions here. If you and your husband both like watching porn together, is it still a sin? Yes. Even if your spouse knows that you're looking at it, it's sinful because what you see on the screen, you think that that's the ideal that you should be striving to, and it can cause problems in marriage if one person doesn't feel as comfortable as the other person trying some of the things. Another stat I had not intended on sharing, but after 50 Shades of Grey came out, the number of ER visits went up because people were trying some of the stuff they saw and they were literally hurting the ones that they loved. So it doesn't, as the stat showed that we talked about tonight, it really doesn't make your performance or your intimacy any better to watch porn with your spouse. So it's just not a good idea. And it also distorts the way you see your
I mean, the one stat when you're seeing, the porn, it makes you, not appreciate your spouse, their body, it hurts you with your own self-image. And it's just not realistic. No man can go that long. No women orgasms that many times.
It's just not healthy.
Guys are not that big all the time. So, it's just,
women don't want it that much. I mean, really. So
tell me about it.
So you're shaking the camera back and forth. So anyways, it's just not God's plan for you. It's not God's best for you. And we want God's best for you. And then if you and your spouse make your own video to watch later, is that a sin? I would say yes, because a struggle that we have, especially in this digital age, is how do I look on the screen? And then it becomes not about that moment of intimacy and vulnerability and connection. It's, oh, look, that was great there. Or look at that position. Or you look great in this. And so you're, again, evaluating the action as opposed to just really letting go and enjoying your love for each other. So it's not helpful. Again, it probably won't make your sex life any better. And it can make it harder to truly openly and honestly communicate about your sexual preferences and needs. So it's just not it's not healthy. We want you to have really healthy, great sex. And next week, we're going to talk about a healthy sex life and what that looks like and how to really make the most of God's gift to us without needing to turn to videos or digital images. All right, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I just think, God has, we throw around sin a lot, and it can really make us feel dirty. I'd rather talk about how are you living more fully into what God wants you to do. The video with your spouse, I'm assuming the person might be going on deployment and want to do that. I don't know really how to say this without getting hit. But if you keep a hold of that as you grow older, things change. You change and your wife changes. And then you could rely more on that video later in life and not appreciate the growth and the bond that you have now, because as kids come, as age comes, as weight comes, we all change. We don't look as pretty as we did when we were 20 some years old.
16 years ago when we got married.
Yeah, we are very different. Gravity has taken an effect. But I will tell you, we might talk about this later, but when you do have sex, the chemicals are released, and it kind of like creates a it creates a permanent image in your head.
For guys, primarily.
And that's why I can very vividly remember my first pornographic image, but I can also very vividly remember Rachel and just times throughout all our marriage, because we've just had really special and wonderful, intimate relationship. We gnoskoed each other in such a really good way that I remember that, a very vivid image.
That's great.
Gnosko is great.
And then we have that relationship and those memories without having to worry about anyone else getting their hands on pastors and and your exploits. Anytime that you put something on a camera or record it, it can end up who knows where. And so that's just another way to feel betrayed in terms of vulnerability, intimacy, and sex that you've created and opened that door to. So we have like 5 minutes left. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions that they want to send our way, but I'm just so glad that people were interested and that you've joined us tonight. And we're just trying to be open and honest, interpreting scripture and our own life experience with you.
This is recorded and it will be available for playback. So if you did not catch it all, want to see the beginning or have to miss the end, it is back and it'll be up there. And we're still trying to figure this all out. And I think it'll also be on Facebook and YouTube. Well, for Nemo, it'll be on Facebook and YouTube. And
pulling up our polls, it seems like you guys are kind of right on target, where Christians and non-Christians are looking at pornography about the same. Christians sometimes more. Actually, Pornhub did data on where the most hits come for pornography, and it's all the Deep South, or like the top 7 states. So that is something to consider. And it looks like we all kind of agree that so masturbation is okay, even though it's not about connection. Pornography is not, because it distorts connections. Exactly, Kelly. So, and again, masturbation for everybody at all times, like once you're married, if you're together and under the same roof, there's really no need to be masturbating, because real life sex is just so much better. So, but, we looked at certain situations, like we went to a very conservative Christian college where people said the only way, we were all told masturbation is a total sin. So the only way that you can ever orgasm is to get married. And so people were rushing to get married that really had no business being married. And then the marriages fell apart. So so that's where it can be an outlet on occasion, not like a daily or a weekly or a regular thing. Or again, during deployments or when you're separated for long periods of time from your spouse. Or there's been instances that we've seen where someone gets married and then, maybe the husband gets testicular cancer or someone ends up in a wheelchair and they're unable to be intimate in that way. And so to say, well, now I'm no longer a sexual being isn't really fair. So yes. Any other? Thank you so much, Dee, for your comment. We're trying to be vulnerable, very honest with all of you, because we need to talk more about this in the church. It's healthy for us, and this is a safe space. The church should be a safe space to talk about how God created us. And we talk a lot about homosexuality, but we don't talk nearly enough about sexuality. And how it was brought to me when I was growing up in the church was, don't have it. It's bad. And as a teenage boy, I'm like, how could something so bad feel so good? We really wanted to talk about, and that's how we talk to our kids about this issue, that it is a gift and it can be used and it's very powerful. It can be used in beautiful, wonderful ways, and it can be misused and cause a lot of hurt, harm, and it can be dangerous. So, so just a quick recap. Next week, we're going to be talking on Valentine's Day. Who knew it was Valentine's Day? So our Valentine's Day gift to you is talking about really great orgasmic sex, how it happens, maybe with, We're not demonstrating. No, not in the least. And then after that, we'll discuss the issue of homosexuality in the United Methodist Church and the way forward. 3-minute video. And stop. And then we will end the month off by talking about the Me Too movement and sexual abuse in the church. What happens when we try to repress our sexuality or objectify people? So thank you for joining us this evening. I do believe that's all the questions that we have, but feel free to keep sending questions throughout the week. Yes. If you want to make sure that we address them next week.
And we will get to, and we'll try to answer them online with written back as we can throughout the week.
Give us a day or two as you keep commenting with your questions, and we'll respond. So again, all the links to the articles, thank you. They just popped up as the call to action, so you guys can access, read further, pray further, and have a great night. Thanks for joining us for our first ever webinar.
Did we say which churches we're from?
Oh, I'm from the Gathering at Scott Memorial United Methodist Church here in Virginia Beach.
And I'm from Nemo United Methodist Church, the oldest.
Not Nemo?
Not Nemo. No. Nemo United Methodist Church in Virginia Beach, the longest continual use United Methodist Church in the state of Virginia. Great history. Old church, new church.
We're the youngest Methodist church in the district. So I'll try to cover all the bases. All right, guys, have a wonderful evening.
God bless.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.